All right, good morning, everybody. My name's Lee George. I am one of the organizers for 1 Million Cups St. Paul. That is where you are at currently. Do we have anybody in the room that has never been here before except for Doug? Well, you all know the routine. Wait, have you been here before?
I've been here a couple times.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your name?
David.
David. Good to see you. Sorry, I didn't remember.
Regular, I guess.
Okay.
I'm trying to be more regular.
We appreciate you being more regular. 1 Million Cups happens every Wednesday. We have Minnesota startups come present. Our job is to listen and then give them good feedback, ask good questions, and connect them to resources. Typically, we have 2 startups present every Wednesday. Today, we have Doug from Kidizen. And with that, I am going to turn over to Doug.
All right, thanks. Hey, everybody. Good morning. Any other parents here in the audience? Good. Then you'll probably understand the pain point that my startup Kidizen is solving. So I've got 2 lovely daughters, Daisy and Molly. They're now ages 10 and 12. But if your house with your kids was anything like ours, there was this constant closets full of clothing, shoes, accessories for our kids. And they would outgrow it very, very quickly. Every 6 months or so, we need to cycle through all that clothing. And it's a real common pain point. In fact, since the beginning of time, really, we've all had to have been outfitting our kids. And if we look in the US, there's a really large opportunity in terms of solving the need for coming up with a solution to dealing with this. In fact, if we look in 2014, 46% of US households were buying resale kids stuff, so used clothing, shoes, accessories for their kids, and they were spending $19 billion in the US alone just on used accessories, clothing, etc. for their kids. So huge market opportunity here, and I think we're all pretty familiar. There's a lot of competitors to us and a lot of different ways that you can find clothing, accessories, shoes, etc. for your kids. And so we looked at all of those things that are going on across the country and the world in terms of how to handle the problem. And there was this other really interesting thing happening at the same time. So eBay is one of those places where people can buy and sell things for their kids. And what we saw was that, well, we estimated there were about 700,000 sellers on eBay in 2013, and that number went down to 600,000 in 2014. So people are leaving eBay, and at the same time, there's been this organic growth of a marketplace experience, i.e. buying and selling and trading in this case, on non-marketplace platforms, in this case Instagram and Facebook. Really curious phenomenon. How are people using a social platform for selling? And they're basically figuring out ways to do it by following each other and by using PayPal to pay with. And we looked at what was happening here and decided to create an experience that was modeling after this organic growth, that was taking advantage of the community aspect that's happening here. I can explain that more in a second. I'm going to show you how we're doing that in terms of our app. So we built Kidizen, launched it about a year ago. I'll just take a real quick spin through it to give you an idea of what we're talking about. So if we launch the app, there's a front page here, which is a featured feed, which features shops and brands. If I go into one of these featured areas, I can see all these items that are listed by sellers that are selling things. I can create this kind of cool kid filter. There's my daughter Daisy when she was 4, which allows me to filter down to content that's gonna fit my kid. And I can then go in and I can see who the seller is, and I can get a sense, if I go visit that shop, of the sense of style that this seller has. And if I like what I see, I can follow that seller. And if I go back to a following feed out here, I can have a feed of items that are coming in from moms, parents that I follow that fit my kid, and essentially start to create a relationship. So other things that happen in the app, there's the ability to comment an item, favorite an item. There's a lot of sharing of the items themselves, as well as a feature that allows sellers to just post a picture of their kid. So whether it's an outfit of the day that they're wearing, or whether it's a, hey, thanks Susie for this great outfit that I got for my daughter Janie, there's a high community factor going on in the product. So we launched about a year ago. Let's get that to flip. And February, actually, it's our 1-year anniversary. We launched in February of 2014. Our user base is kind of all over the country. It kind of looks like a geographic population density map of the US. And business has been going well. Starting in about last summer, we started taking off. We had a little bit of a downturn through the holidays, which we expected. We're a resale marketplace, and there's a lot of focus on retail. And since the holidays, it's been, so they say, up and to the right. So business has been really good. All the core fundamentals of the business are doing great in terms of the amount of sell-through we're seeing, in terms of sellers being buyers and buyers being sellers, in terms of seeing repeat sellers and repeat purchases. All of that's going great. And we currently make our money by taking a really small commission from our sellers. So every time they sell an item, we take 7% of that sale price. In the future, we plan to take a larger cut as a marketplace fee by introducing some features which make it easier for new sellers to come on board. And we'll talk more about that later. That's really my fundamental question I want to talk to you guys about. We're forecasting high growth based on the growth trajectory we're seeing and knowing that there's a lot of potential sellers that are out there. And we're essentially building a high growth software as a service startup business. We've got a great team behind it. I spent most of my career, I'm a Minnesota kid, and then I moved out west for about 20 years and spent most of my career in Silicon Valley and was lucky enough to do a couple of startups and have an exit with one of them from Tell Me to Microsoft, which was a blast. Dory and Mary are my co-founders, backgrounds in retail and marketing, in particular marketing to moms, a great experience there. We've got a rock solid dev team too. 5 of us full-time and a couple part-time people. And that's pretty much my presentation to give you an idea of what we're about. How are we doing on time? Under 6? Yeah. Yes.
So, yeah, you got 1 minute left. You can tell jokes.
No, I can't actually. But so my question that I wanted to get some feedback from everybody on really comes down to this piece right here. So when we started building this marketplace, and I might even ask first if there's just questions about how it works, but the basic idea was we were seeing this organic growth in this area, in these non-marketplace experiences that are really community-driven experiences. And they're also leaving eBay because they're tired of high fees and confusion around all the different fees that go along with selling on eBay. And so they started figuring out that they could create their own accounts here in Instagram and in Facebook. They're usually part of a brand community. So Matilda Jane is a high-end kids clothing brand. And there are a lot of these different groups that are out there that it's not Matilda Jane as a brand that's creating them. It's basically fans of the brand that have created this Facebook group. And they all talk with each other about that brand. Then they buy and sell and trade with one another. So it was looking at this interesting thing happening where they're selling and how rapidly it was growing, and also realizing that they're essentially selling for free other than having to pay PayPal fees. So we wanted to tap into that community piece, and we wanted to start our business by addressing the unmet need of arguably a not very good marketplace experience because you can't search for anything in either of these platforms. It's hard to find people. There's no payment service or built into it, etc. So essentially our strategy was let's build something that's dialing into all that community goodness going on, but let's put a payment system in it. But we need to be careful because we can't charge as much as these guys are because they all left there. And so it was that tricky balance. And our original question was, geez, are we going to charge anybody anything? Or are we just going to build it and go for scale first and then introduce revenue? We kind of ended up in the middle and decided, let's go build a sort of minimum viable product that does charge a 7% fee, getting back to this. But the seller's going to be responsible for the shipping process or the fulfillment. So when a seller sells an item, they get notified in our app that they sold the item. They also get notified through PayPal. We're using PayPal as our gateway. And then within PayPal, they have all the shipping information. And so then they essentially estimate how much their package is going to weigh, or a lot of them actually have scales because they were selling previously. They weigh it, they put a shipping label on it, get it off to the post office, and it goes out the door. Now, we know there's a lot of people that will do that, but our vision really is to build a global method that can essentially eat up a large piece of what is now arguably maybe 15 or 20 different ways that people are transacting kids' clothing. To do that, we need to get rid of that difficulty of essentially the fulfillment. And our thinking is that we'll create a shipping label for our sellers and send it to them. Yeah.
Doug, I first met you just almost a year ago at Best Buy when you were one of the companies presenting the Piranha tank.
Yep.
You've made tremendous progress. Congratulations. I think it's going to be a challenge for you to convince your current partners to stay unless they really see the value of what they get for an additional 10% commission.
Yep.
And so,
Says he's paying the shipping, that makes it bulletproof, yes.
well, Tim,
Debate.
Tim, I hear what you're saying, but my thought is you better do some type of focus group or connection or whatever to test Tim's bulletproof hypothesis and talk to people about that, and then also make sure that you're keeping some of the 10% for yourself. If you end up with a net of 10 versus 7, and you can continue to expand your audience, and that's great. I would just caution to be careful, because there are lots of stories about these types of approaches blowing up in people's faces.
We don't want to ruin that.
Correct.
I don't know if you want to respond to that, or I was kind of adding on to it. I think, have most of your customers or sellers been folks that have transitioned over from eBay? Because I look at, I have a 2-year-old, so we're certainly the target market for it. And I think what would stop me and my wife from becoming sellers or more active on it is simply we're not set up. We don't have a scale. We haven't had an eBay shop in the past.
Yep.
The little extra cost to eliminate that hassle would maybe push us over the top. So if that's kind of the long tail you're looking to attract the lots of folks like myself out there that don't want the hassle, I think that could make sense. And I think to his point, obviously the existing customer base, I don't know if there's a 2-tiered platform.
These are all the questions we're asking, and yes, to your point, we are right now. We have created an advisory group within our sort of key power sellers, and we're talking to them about this, trying to get their feedback. And we've got a lot of hypotheses of what the right method will be. Certainly, it could include it's a tiered system. Say the pros of that is let's not disrupt in any way what we currently have and figure out how to add in that convenience. The cons of that is then we start to become more complicated from a seller's point of view because you have to make more choices. And we've strived to create an experience that is not very much typing, it's clicking, it's tapping, and making it really streamlined and easy. So that, those are the challenges we're kind of working with. But another thing we've considered too is in solving that convenience, shipping label certainly helps, but do we take it a step further? We've always had on our roadmap that knowing that a lot of activity happens locally, whether it be Craigslist, whether it be a garage sale, whether it be going to a thrift store, whether it be going to a consignment store. There's a lot of those in there. Craigslist arguably has a big corner on the market, and there's a lot of people that are attacking Craigslist. So our strategy, big picture wise, was to start with shippables and build a brand, right? Build something that's working. And once it gets starts taking off, and then try and go and attack the local. But that could include something around offering as a lister. If it's a large item like a crib, it's local pickup only, right? So would that flip the bit for you as a parent? Or what if there was what we call a white glove convenience service where you simply ship it in and then it gets photographed and listed for you on your behalf?
Yeah, I think possibly, because right now what we would do is gather a bunch of clothes that we have all at one time and donate them, likely give them to a friend.
Yep.
really for us, the two options have never sold. You know, it's something we haven't really looked at. I think just haven't wrapped our heads around it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it certainly could be.
It's similar around just the timing question. I don't have kids. I have my goddaughter, that's the oldest sibling of twins, and so her parents are extremely busy people. So I've gone and picked up high chairs for them from other people in the community that have had twins. And so like the time factor of them having these mountains close and then processing them and figuring out all the payment things, just kind of curious of what feedback you've got received about that, and then also your lifespan for a seller. You used a jargony term called power sellers. And so like, so are there people who like are gonna like work as these like middle people distributors, and or like how does that work? Because it seems like you have a 0 to 3, maybe 4 to 4 years, but does it go beyond that? I don't know. It's just like what's the lifespan of your user?
I love the idea. I do a whole bunch of stuff on eBay. Don't have the energy to set up my store and figure out how to do it through Instagram and all that.
Yep.
The way to do it, that would be great. 7%, you can have it. If you can do the shipping for 17, God bless you. Take it all day long. You're going to have to figure out how to do what eBay does to get FedEx and USPS to give you the discount.
Yep.
And it looks like the post office kind of blows in the wind. One day they give you $1 off, and the next day they give you $12 off.
Yeah.
And Lord knows what they're thinking about.
Yeah.
But that's a huge value. You don't need to send them the label. You just need to make it possible for them to hit the print button.
Yep.
It comes out themselves with your discount.
Yep.
Amazon doesn't do that. Amazon won't give you the discount. Amazon is a lot more expensive for shipping than eBay is. So there are pluses and minuses. The 7% is tolerable.
Yeah.
17%, I was not paying attention when you first did it, and I said 17, now you're just getting back to eBay's 21% is kind of what I just factor eBay in for. That's too much.
How does the 21%?
I never know, there's so much crap in
But that's essentially when you're selling on eBay, you're thinking it's 21% is going to be.
When I'm done with my eBay transaction, 21% comes off the top, and I get 79% is about where it comes out.
Including you shipping on your own, or is eBay covering that shipping?
eBay covers nothing.
Yeah.
I have the customer pay for shipping, and eBay charges 21% of my shipping charges also.
Right.
They give me a discount,
right.
But then they charge their commission on the total deal. It used to be that they would not charge on shipping. Then they figured out people were tweaking the prices to make that work in the seller's favor.
Yep.
And they said, to hell with that, we're charging for everything now. And I can't remember what all it is. There's a 5% listing fee and a 12% sales fee.
Yep.
And it depends on how much you're selling and what you're doing, and if you have a store and all that different stuff that's involved. But I just end up factoring it in at 20%, and it's always been amazing to me that nobody's figured out how to come and bump heads with eBay, and if they just continue to run the show the way that they run it, nobody can figure out how to go up against them.
Yeah, well, obviously we're big believers in the verticalization of marketplaces, and it's happening in other verticals too. In particular, with women's fashion, there's a number of mobile first, but also web companies that are arguably paving the way in terms of taking a vertical slice. And it makes sense, really, if you think about it, because now you're dealing with buyers and sellers that care about the same thing. And so that there is, especially if there's a community focus to it, and there's sharing and essentially building relationships with other buyers or sellers, it makes a lot more sense for it to be verticalized. And you can think about it in terms of if you're a musician, music gear, or into sporting goods, et cetera. But I want to go back to the questions that you asked. One was around lifetime value, essentially, or how long lifespan of a customer. And then there were other questions around that too. So arguably about 10 years. And I can speak to that both from science and from experience. But for, the data shows, just in the first 2 years, the kid goes through 7 sizes. And over the course of a child growing up, it's 20 sizes. I have 2 daughters that are tweens that are 10 and 12, and they're kind of right on the edge of that, of us being able to pick out clothes for them. They have their own opinions and they're very strong about it, and it just doesn't work anymore. Tweenism would make a lot of sense for the 10 to 16, 17-year-old crowd, but arguably if we get a new user in as they have their first child, which is when a lot of these parents who are doing it on Instagram have started to connect, and I can relate to that from my own experience and my wife's experience when we first had kids. Your life, as you can all relate to, totally changes. Everyone tells you it's going to change, you're like, yeah, but no, it really changes. Your friend sets change, your values change, everything changes, and you seek out new community, really. You seek out friends that have kids that are same ages, and because you're looking to share experiences and you're kind of starting over again in many ways. So the thing that we think is really interesting about that community focus and why it's been taking off on Instagram and why it's working for us is because of that community piece. And arguably, from ages 0 through age up to about 10, it makes sense that you're still trying to connect with that community to help basically raise your kid with clothing, etc. Remind me of what the first part of the question was.
Issues with parents, especially with young kids, of just the ability to take all their clothes and, you know, do it appropriately and be able to get that return on investment of it.
Yeah. And I think part of that question you were asking too had to do with different types of personas that might be using Kidizen, or we're using Instagram, or we're using eBay. And Power Sellers was in there too. So we definitely have different types of personas that are on our platform. We have some that are a power seller, meaning they're selling a lot of volume. It is, and looking at what they have in their closet, and also just talking to them, we know that it's not just the stuff their kids are wearing. Some of them actually have a consignment store as well, and so this is another channel for them to extend their reach for buyers. Some of them are, like we all know, the friend amongst the group of friends that has the time or has the energy or has the desire to do this kind of a thing, and they might be collecting some of the best stuff from their friends in their friend set and selling it for them online. There's also, you know, a different type of persona, someone who's really just there for the community, and they're there for self-expression, really, because especially as your kids are, you know, ages 0 to 3, 4, you get to dress them and it's fun. You know, you get to dress them, you get to pick out the clothes, and really it's an extension of self as identity, right, in terms of fashion. It's not about, the kid doesn't care, you know. And it's funny too, because as we think about those favorite outfits, like, we as parents get attached to those outfits. The kid doesn't care. The kid they don't care. They can go on. We're attached to it, right? So let it go. And so there's definitely parents that are on our platform who are there because of the community piece and because of the extension of self and being able to share and find others to connect with. Yeah.
Doug, I'm curious, when you're talking about the 0 to 10 age group, are you finding out if it's the child, him or herself, that's getting engaged with the selection of new outfits on Kidizen, or is it the parents, is it the two of them together? How does that work?
Yeah, today, from research and talking with users, it's the parent, yeah. And our platform is 99% women, so it's mostly mom. A lot of times we'll talk about our audience and just say mom. There's some other dudes on there along with me, but for the most part, it's mom.
And the beauty of your deal is that you're not dealing with the people buying the Target onesie for $3 at the store. You're dealing with the wackos who are spending $84 on shoes, 6 pairs at a time that are going to last for 2 months, and then they go do it again. Well, they want the money back on the high-buck stuff that they paid $1 jillion for, and the people on the other end appreciate getting the $70 outfit for $25. So it works.
Yeah, and that's interesting. I'll come back to you in a sec. I want to comment on that. That is the audience that was attracted to Instagram, and that's the audience we've started with. And that is a key differentiator for us. We've got a couple other competitors that are startup competitors that are focusing on the other end of the spectrum, so lower priced items. And we have embraced the higher priced items that tend to be more fashion focused because for a number of reasons. I think one of the most important ones is our community is the soul of our business. We're much like building a company. If any of you are entrepreneurs and have built a company or been part of building a company, every single new person you bring in as an employee is critical to building that business. They have a lot of responsibility and they have an incredible impact on the culture. All Kidizen is really is we're fostering these relationships, right? And so every new person we bring into that community who's a buyer or a seller has impact, especially early on as we're building it. And back to these sellers, they tend to be the most passionate. And as a core audience who we're starting with, they tend to be very passionate. They tend to focus on fashion. Interestingly, they don't skew from a demographic standpoint as high income, but they tend to be, a stereotype would be tend to be maybe more urban, or at least more progressive, more artistic sense of style. But the question fundamentally that I'm kind of here asking about is, yeah, there's a core audience there, and you know, there's a lot out there that are like that. But if we want to get to everybody, right, and our ambition is to be global and to be a resource for parents, how do we scale beyond that? Kind of comes out to, go ahead.
Well, I love your positioning, and I'm shaking my head because you're talking about like 90% of my friends probably. You know.
Good. Tell them about Kidizen.
Actually, I'm going to. But I live in Northeast Minneapolis, and we just have a really, you know, strong community there. And there's a lot of Facebook. You know, there's a lot going on in Facebook that's newer. You know, with local trading, and I actually will put stuff out, you know, for free, like Lincoln Logs recently, and I was like, I am not picking these up one more time. And I just put them out on my porch, and somebody just came and picked them up.
Yep.
Oh yeah, in the morning before they took them out. So it was, but what I was thinking about is, you mentioned a couple of things. Earlier on you mentioned like, hey, would it be better if somebody just shipped in all of their stuff? And there's quite a few women's stores that are doing that kind of almost on consignment, right? And like, you ship it in, you may not get any money back, but and anything that they won't use, they donate, right? So, and that appeals to me, though I haven't done it. But it also appeals to me for kids stuff. But the other thing is that, like, as you've seen this like explosive growth, and then you're like, well, how do we make this more accessible? You know, I mean, it might be that you know, you might be where you can just have this great growth and not have to do shipping and not have to add on these other things that make business more complicated. But the fact is that you're at 7%. You're lower than eBay. You're lower than these other. And I really love the, you know, the positioning that you've created with kind of urban moms. And I think that can go global. But I'm wondering if it is even necessary to try to penetrate a market or a person that isn't going to do it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I mean, I think that obviously with, you know, as entrepreneurs, it's like, yeah, you could test that, but for me, it always comes down to time. I have 3 kids, 3, 7, and 9. You know, perfect into your market. But I'm like my kids. I don't care what they wear. But I have friends that will tell me, like, I can't believe your kids are wearing that. You know what I mean? So. And those are the people I'll tell about Kidizen. But yeah, like it's like, you know, are you going to get the folks that are not, you know, that aren't really going to take the time to do it, even if you make it so simple for them, they just might not do it. And, but just the people that are already going to be willing to do this, just keep going after them and keep that 7%, keep rocking it.
Yeah, where's there value to us being buyers and not sellers?
Yeah.
Totally. See, I'm a buyer.
And I think that's,
I think Dave will find out you're giving your stuff away because what the hell else do you do with it? If you find out that can be $200, $300 a month just by taking a quick picture, throwing it on the deal, and putting a stamp on it when somebody says yes, it's not that much work. You don't have to get everybody. Just go ahead and get the ones that get it. Don't touch it. Whatever you do, don't touch it. People send their stuff in, and they have a value of this is worth $27, and somebody else wants to pay $3. All of a sudden, you're the mediator telling people it's not worth $27. What are you thinking about? It's got a stain on it and all that. Let everybody themselves.
Well, and we struggle with that one too. There are some potential interesting upsides to it, but the big downside is our model right now is very portable, because we aren't managing inventory, and it keeps our overhead low. I mean, we actually have a business that can get profitable on 7%. Number of transactions in order to become interesting, and even in order to become cash flow positive. So it's, at the end of the day, it comes down to how the price point on kids' clothing is generally lower than other verticals. Women's clothing, for instance, good comparison point. And if we're taking a low percentage as a marketplace fee, and then we have a cost of that revenue because we have a payment gateway as well. At the end of the day, what it really comes down to is how much revenue are we making on any given transaction. Our theory has always been, because of both stickiness, i.e. repeat purchase behavior, repeat seller behavior, and lifetime value, that it more than makes up for that, and we're starting to see that. We've only been out for a year, so we can't prove the 10-year cycle, but we have good data in terms of what our lifetime value is doing. So I think it's something that we're exploring. The other thing, back to the research on the prepaid shipping label, we have done research outside of recently forming a focus group, and one of the questions we asked was about a prepaid shipping label. And it was the #1 most requested feature going to our existing sellers. Like, yeah, that would make my life easier if all I had to do was click print. So I think fundamentally it's an economic thing, looking at the model, and knowing that with scale comes support, server costs, infrastructure, basically everything, and like how, is that all going to balance out and work out? And we don't know yet, so we need to be exploring different revenue streams.
Can you do something as simple as including one of those digital scales and having charged, it's $15 for the scale,
yeah.
Have them, before they hit the print button on your deal, tell me, is this 2 pounds or 16 pounds or what is it?
Yeah, we've thought about that in onboarding sellers, or offering it as a package to potential power sellers. Yep, it's a good idea.
When you mentioned, one of your users being someone in an area collecting all their friends, neighbors, clothes to sell, I was kind of thinking about myself as a seller. Even though you might have the technology down the road to make it easy for me to sell, would there also be maybe another avenue with power seller in a geographic area where you have buyers that could be also sellers but haven't to this point, and somehow coordinating or hooking them up or providing so that they can come up, they can pick up all my items that I would like to sell but don't want to deal with the hassle.
Yep.
They've got inventory, helps your inventory side. I don't know if that's something you've looked into.
Yeah, no, we've thought about it. We've ideated on it. We haven't done any market tests on it. When we run the numbers on it and also looked at the incumbents we're dealing with, which are pretty tough, we net out that it's a little bit later strategy to explore, but definitely important. Definitely important.
And is it the competitors there just bricks and mortar consignment shops? Yeah,
brick and mortar consignment shops is a big one. Craigslist really is a big. That's the 800-pound gorilla. And there are a lot of other startups that are focused on local. Facebook is a great example of local. I mean, there's definitely buy-sell trade communities around brands that are shipping things, but there are startups using Facebook. Facebook itself is a platform amongst groups that are local. There's Virage Sale, which is basically taking on Craigslist, and there's a bunch of other, not vertically specific, but broad vertically, which in my humble opinion is really hard to do. But yeah. It's just harder, and we think we need to have some scale first.
That's all the time we have for questions. The one we always ask at the end is, after this conversation, what can this community do for you in Kidizen?
Tell your friends, obviously. That's kind of an easy one. As you're thinking about this more, if you think about this more, send me an email or call me, dug@kidizen.com. No O, D-U-G. Because this has been awesome. It was great feedback, and you guys are hitting on a lot of things that we've thought about, which is both reassuring, and you're also raising some good points that I hadn't thought about. So thanks a lot.
Thanks, Doug.